All right, so we'll let everybody come in, but let's just begin. So if everybody who's already in, if we have your permission, if we could close our eyes, and Dr. Sadeghi will begin to open a canopy of light in order to have an energetic experience that allows us to move through what we need to move through together. So, Doctor, please lead us through, and as everyone comes in, then I will do the introduction.
Perfect. Good morning. Good evening, everyone. All right, so just allowing our eyes to come together, and perhaps whatever language that I use, just consider that it's just a language, and perhaps you can hear it the way that it speaks to you. And as we focus on our breath, and as we breathe in the loving, as we breathe out the loving, really the intention is asking for a clearing and connection to that which we consider divine. And as we connect with that, Father, Mother God, beloved friend, Lord God of all creation, a divine Holy Spirit, ocean of mercy. Ocean of mercy that we're all swimming in. Ocean of mercy that we're all swimming in, like fish in the sea. And just like fish in the sea, perhaps it's only now, perhaps during these days, that we're becoming even more aware of the water in this ocean of mercy that we've been swimming in most of our lives. That water that is everywhere, that spiritual realm that is everywhere, holding us, upholding us, uplifting us, and allowing us to move through. We're so grateful. We're so grateful. And from that place of gratitude, we humbly ask for a column of light to be present here, wherever we are, wherever our community is, in our homes. And we humbly ask for all of us, our families, our friends, our two-legged, four-legged friends, all of our projects, and really all globe, the entire universe, to be filled with this light. We humbly ask for any karma, any negativity, any misunderstandings, misinterpretations, any misidentifications, any misuse of energy, any holding patterns, limited beliefs, any transgenerational patterns that may be bleeding through genetically or epigenetically, physically or energetically, that it's ready to be released. For all this to be released with ease and grace back into the nothingness where they came from, in that highest realm of light and sound, where everything is fluid, and for all that to be repurposed into qualities that would remind us even further and deeper, qualities that would remind us that we are souls having a human experience in this realm, in this university called life. We are so grateful. We send forward qualities of surrender, of acceptance, of curiosity, of calm, groundedness, trust, forgiveness, and healing grace. We send these qualities forward into the remainder of today's session, today's gathering, and in times ahead, really. And we give thanks. We give thanks for those teachers, those masters, those spiritual beings that they've come before us, guiding us, trailblazing us, really, on this walk of awakening, recognition, awareness. For all this, we give our thanks in the name of that which is sacred, sanctified, and yet ineffable. Amen.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I want to thank everybody for being here today, for the generosity of your time. For some of you, it's very early morning. Dr. Sadeghi, it's 6 a.m. for him. East Coast, it's 9 a.m. Those in Europe, it's in the afternoon, and some of us, a little late afternoon. We have over 20 countries represented today, and inshallah, we will have an experience that we all remember. So I just want to begin by sharing that Dr. Sadeghi is a dear friend, a brother, a mentor, and actually our doctor. He has helped myself, my loved ones, and our family through some of the challenging experiences we've had, and he has given us the honor and privilege to also support many of the families that we care for as genetic care through their experiences that need to be had. And just before we begin, and I let Dr. Sadeghi help us through to shift perspectives on, what we're experiencing today and to look at the opportunities for what is being presented. One thing that he may want to touch on is that we've both been through the same cancer. His happened during medical school and mine happened at the age of 35. But interestingly, the manifestation of his was testicular and mine was in the middle of my chest based on our own respective experiences of life. And I think that just gives you a perspective. He obviously then continued to become a doctor, but today practices from a very multidimensional space of the physical, the mental, the emotional, the relational, but also the psycho-spiritual. And funny enough, I today get the honor and privilege of caring for many families around the world with that similar perspective of looking at well-being from a multidimensional space. So thank you very much, Dr. Habib Sadeghi, for your generosity of your time. And I look forward to hearing and sharing together with our beloveds from many, many countries around the world. Please, Doctor.
Thank you, Feisal, for that generous introduction. It's really a privilege to be here and to share from a space of vulnerability, curiosity, and really learning together. And part of the idea of creating a linguistic abstraction of a prayer, or as you so eloquently put it, as a canopy of light, is for all of us to be dialed in or connected or set an intention or intentionality of speaking from a deeper place of our hearts. And I think every human being is on this journey in this university called life with a soul curriculum. Perhaps my soul curriculum has been to some extent complex, maybe even challenging, perhaps challenging with respect to some and not so challenging with respect to others. And I know that there are other people on this call and gathering, virtual gathering, that may have had a far more challenging experiences in their life. Currently, globally, what we're working with is a level of, if you would, uncertainty. And the intent is to speak, and I can share with you from my perspective as a medical technologist, as a microbiologist, which that's what I a practice before even going to medical school, and then becoming a family doctor. And I'll tell you a little bit about my training so that you maybe perhaps for those of you who I've never had the privilege of connecting with, you understand my perspective. I did an internal medicine internship and then a family practice residency, as well as afterwards, I got a master's in spiritual psychology with a fellowship or emphasis on consciousness, health, and healing. And the largest psychoanalytical institute in Los Angeles is referred to as PCC. And I've been mentored by the dean, the former dean of PCC, School of Psychoanalysis, Dr. John Tabakin, as well as many others. And the intent was to really look at the relationship between mind, body, and spirit. And that is really the emphasis, the window, the gate that I come through when it comes to diseases, when it comes to unpredictabilities, when it comes to uncertainties. Some of my thoughts and my point of views I've gathered in my recent book called The Clarity Cleanse. And there's several tools that I present that I have found it very effective, and I recommend them routinely to those incredible beings that I've had the privilege of ministering to as a family doctor or a mentor. Currently, what we're dealing with is globally is certain level of uncertainty. And I posted on Instagram a little image of one of the poems of Roomie, Rumi's Masnavi. He talks about the elephant and the 9 blind men. And it's just fascinating depending on how you come in, and it's a dark room, or they were blind, however you would like, or limited visually, or visually impaired, however you want to look at it, depending on what you are grabbing, depending on what you are holding on to. Some would refer to it as a pillar, some refer to it as a fan, some would refer to it as a rope, and so forth. Really, this is exactly that. There are certain awarenesses that I would like to share with you. Part of my background is in anthroposophical medicine. Usually in the United States, when you say anthroposophy, people usually say bless you because they think you sneezed. But in Europe, anthroposophy and anthroposophical medicine is relatively huge. We have our own hospitals and significant trainings and so forth. The founders of anthroposophical medicine, Rudolf Steiner, back in 1917, mind you, 1917. This is before the Spanish flu pandemic that infected over 500 million individuals on the planet. He left a whisper of a wisdom for us. Steiner is referred to, or I consider him, or within the community of anthroposophical medicine, we refer to him as a conscious clairvoyant. And Steiner talked about the effect that electrification would have on us as human beings. And I don't think it's an accident that in 1917, that's when the radio wave was introduced on Earth. And shortly after that, we had the Spanish flu. And then if we come up and we look at the civilization, right after that was the World War II with the introduction and carpeting of the entire globe with radar and another pandemic. And then you come up to 1965 in Hong Kong flu epidemic. And that's when we started placing various different satellites in Van Allen belt, and that's the area of Earth that it's supposed to integrate radiations from what we refer to as cosmic radiations from various different planets, and it gets integrated and it trickles down on Earth. So as a human being, we're supposed to be, accessing all these cosmic radiations. Back at the beginning, we picked 7 days in a week because the telescope that we've had at the time could only allow us to be able to detect and see 7 planets. Monday, it's really named after moon. Sunday is named after the sun. Saturday, it's named after Saturn, and so forth. So these planets around Earth, they do affect us. And so when we bring in various different technologies, such as 2G or 3Gs or 4Gs or now 5Gs, where we've placed over 20,000 satellites around Earth, and the radiation that it starts, it's not a far-fetched idea that based on the theory of anthroposophy, our own cells could be affected, and they would excrete certain numbers of, if you would, DNA and RNA and proteins, that then it would self-organize into viruses that they would replicate. And that is really consistent when you're looking at, for instance, right now, the coronavirus or the COVID pathology that it's occurring in Italy is different than that of Iran or South Korea. And more research needs to be done, and it's being done, and we're understanding more about it. So the first thing that I would like to bring forward is, wherever you are, there is one simple thing that you could do, and you don't really need to believe in anything that I'm saying. I'm just recommending, if you do have Wi-Fi around your homes, and we're all cooped up in our homes, consider perhaps at night when you go to sleep, maybe you could deactivate or turn off the servers that you have, the 5G technology or various different things that you have, so that to some extent you are protected, especially at night. When we look at sleep as the mother of death, if you would. So sleep is so important in terms of our connection to the mystery, our connection to the cosmos, and various different radiations and so forth. So at least at night, for that 8 hours, 12 hours, the number of hours that you feel rejuvenated, perhaps you could cocoon yourself. And obviously, as Steiner talked about, that when you electrify the air, as he called it, he said that, and I'm paraphrasing a quote that he left for us, that during these times that the air is swirling with electrification, it's a lot more difficult to be a human being. And it requires a significant amount of spiritual expenditure. And that is, I think, it's very important. And I think perhaps to some extent, it might even be a blessing for all of us, that maybe that now that we're cocooned up, now that we're not traveling all over the planet, now that the families are beginning to have an opportunity to really realign, reacclimate, and be reintroduced to that soul that is inside, not the phenotypic expression, not what our family members look like, but at the soul level, the soul that is presence. And I think it is an incredible opportunity for families to get reacquainted and to cultivate their own spiritual practices that they have. And we know that that is a requirement to be able to pull through these dark ages, these times of unpredictabilities, and so many people are suffering. Obviously, I'm aware that even here in Los Angeles, there's a free clinic in downtown LA that periodically I cover, and there are two bedrooms that now the 12 people, 13 people, that they live in 2-bedroom houses because they had shifts. That's 6 or 7 of them would work daytime and 6 or 7 of them would work at night. And then this is how they would share that 2-bedroom, and then they would save their monies and they would send it to their families and so forth as migrant workers and so forth. And right now, there are no jobs and they're all cooped up, 13, 14 people in 2 bedrooms. You look at the quality of food becomes important. And I know that as a community with QuinCare, this is something that we've talked about quite a bit, the importance of food. And, there are significant people in history. Hippocrates left a whisper for us to allow our food to be our medicine and our medicine to be our food. And short of that, there are other supplements and various different things that we could do as a preventative measure to boost up our immunity. And that's a good place for us to really consider. You see, I think the adage and the wisdom that it's the light within me is far, far more important than any darkness outside of me. That whisper is something for us to really consider. And I think that light that was spoken of is really nothing short of our own immunity, whether physical immunity or psycho-spiritual immunity. And it really speaks about the mindset that we bring with us and how we relate to whatever it is that's coming at us. I see that there are things that are coming up. I'm not sure if they're questions or various different things, but I'm gonna leave it, Feisal, to your very competent team headed by Jamie, and I would like to thank your entire team for this opportunity. So, and if there are questions, I would love for us, rather than a monologue, to have a dialogue and to see specifically what are the questions that our communities at QuinCare have, so that I can focus perhaps my sharing in that direction.
Keep going, Doctor. I just asked them to share as things come up as you share. So please keep going, and when things come up, whenever you stop, we'll continue. We'll address the questions after.
Okay, so we've covered the importance of spiritual practices. We've covered the importance of the food that we consume. We've covered the importance of supplementation. Supplementation is something that is incredibly important, in my opinion. And what you want to focus on is detoxification, especially during this time. And detoxification, perhaps it's no coincidence that given the holy month of Ramadan next week, I think it's an incredible opportunity in, and this process of fasting and cleansing. The beauty of it and the importance of it is it's to understand that I think fasting has a role far more than not eating during certain times or not drinking during certain times. I think fasting is has a lot also to do curbing the various different thoughts and feelings and emotions that they resurface for us. Because one of the side effects of what Steiner referred to as electrification of air, or the very ambiance that we're living in, is that it's a lot easier for us to be bombarded with various different thoughts. And they might, now please mind you that thoughts are far more important and different than thinking. Thinking is an active, intentional process that you choose as the master of your own domain to be able to do. Thoughts are just randomly, you might be doing something, you might be using restroom, you might be taking a shower, you might be writing a letter, reading an email, or reading a text or reviewing something, but you continuously are aware of various different thoughts that they're coming in. Those random thoughts, you know, with an untrained mind, it can be very abrasive and corrosive, because those thoughts will create and upregulate different neurotransmitters. And these neurotransmitters are chemicals that they're mainly produced within the nervous system, including the brain. Epinephrine, norepinephrine, or adrenaline, noradrenaline, melatonin, histamine to some extent, serotonin, and so forth. These are some of the examples. So what do they do? Well, these are active chemicals that they, over a period of time, that they can create various different feelings for us. We know that if you consume significant amount of fava beans has a high content of dopamine, and dopamine as a neurotransmitter, it can affect our physiology and shifts and changes our physiology. And then these feelings that we have, whether we feel hungry, or whether we feel horny, or whether we feel angry, or whether we feel anxious, the variation of these different chemicals being produced, they can affect our hormonal system. Hormones such as DHEA, pregnenolone, progesterone, 3 forms of estrogens, growth hormone, testosterone, and so forth. And then these hormones, they can set in an emotional terrain or a personality. And this is how certain people, they tend to be perhaps more irritated or more irritable. And more people may have a temperament of having more of a depressive personalities, or more anxious personalities, and so forth. And these emotional set points or personalities or temperaments, for most people, if they don't go through a cleansing period, if they don't go through a period where they get to monitor their own thoughts, their own feelings and emotional states, they will crystallize into behavioral pattern, and we get caught in them. And then it creates a vicious cycles, because obviously these behavioral patterns then can allow us cognitively to be more porous for different thoughts to come in, or different feelings to be activated, evoked, or different emotions to set in. And that is the lunacy of an unexamined life. So part of the process, I think, given we just celebrated the holy days, the Good Fridays, and various different holy days, and even the holy days of Pesach Samech. I don't think that it's a coincidence that a lot of these spiritual practices and various different religions, the cleansing period, has really lined up so perfectly, and perhaps it is an opportunity for us to reflect those, and whatever our comfort is, and whatever the lineage is that we were born in, or whatever the lineage is, or the spiritual practices that we're using, that we cultivate those, that we really give them a significant level of leverage over our lives. One of, if you would, blessings of this time period is that it has really globally stopped all human beings. And it's providing us an opportunity to examine our lives and to see, the value systems that we had. Do they still speak to us? Are they still important? What are the value systems? It's an incredible opportunity during these fasting months, during these religious cleansing times, for us to take a look at the judgments that we're holding, not only against others, but perhaps the judgments that we're holding against ourselves. As the founder of Integrative medicine, which is really, if you would, the branch of medicine that considers how our body, our physical bodies are nothing more than a canopy, nothing more than a theater for these various unexamined thoughts, feelings, and emotions to get manifested. And instead of attacking these symptoms, instead of radiating, instead of burning, instead of amputating, you really go into disease as an opportunity for a psycho-spiritual awakening, as an opportunity to examine deeper. And that's really the conversation that currently we're having. This conversation is a black belt conversation. It's not a white belt conversation. If you simply think that you are here and you only have a physical presence, what I'm saying might not make sense, and it might even be confusing. But if you have the depth of consciousness, and if you have cultivated the consciousness where you are aware that you are here as a spiritual warrior, having a physical experience, then what I'm saying can perhaps land deeper, and you can see the role that certain qualities that cannot be purchased on Amazon, on your favorite grocery store or Alibaba, or you can't order forgiveness anywhere. Forgiveness, especially compassionate self-forgiveness, is an inherent quality that must be cultivated. And you have an opportunity to do that, to start with the judgments that you're holding against yourself. These judgments could be judgments such as limited beliefs that you failed in your life, that you made a judgment that perhaps you married the wrong person, perhaps you're holding judgment against a broken relationship, whether it was with a significant partner, or whether in a business transaction, or whether a partner as in a life partner. The judgments that we hold against ourselves, they can affect our physical state. This is an incredible idea that now we have research, even some of the most prestigious elite academic institutions such as Harvard, Stanford, since 1950s, we've known this. And we've done scientific studies to look at the deleterious effects that judgments and stress have on us physically. Forgiveness, starting with compassionate self-forgiveness, forgiving ourselves for the judgments that we're holding. Within the Islamic culture, it's just beautiful that when you look at the Holy Quran, every surah starts with, except one, Tawbah, it starts with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. When you look at the etymology of Rahman and Rahim, the etymology of Rahman and Rahim, it comes from Rahim, which is the womb, which is the uterus. Now, what's fascinating as a medical doctor, when you look at Rahim is the only organ that is so giving. It doesn't really ask questions. You can get a sperm and an egg, and you can allow it to go through the fertilization process, get yourself a zygote and an embryo. You can take that embryo and place it inside a rahim, a uterus, that is completely different. And we call these individuals surrogates. Now, that they offer selflessly their uterus for this embryo to be implanted. It doesn't reject it. It doesn't say, well, this is not, I don't know where this sperm came from, where this egg came from, where did this embryo came from. It's just giving. And the surrogacy allows this embryo to become a full-on life, and it gives birth. And I think to some extent, us coming together as a community, we have an opportunity to be and to create family after family, individual after individual, to create a psycho-spiritual surrogacy where each family could be a rahim, where each family could act as a womb for a new consciousness, you see, for a new consciousness. And that consciousness is something that all of us, 7.85 billion human beings, 7.85 billion students on this university called life, that they've matriculated, and each person has different soul curriculum. And a good metaphor would be that. So perhaps you could consider, if you've gone through college, if you've done any graduate studies, when you go in, you know, not everyone gets the same curriculum. If you want to focus on getting an MBA, your curriculum is completely different. A person who wants to specialize in engineering, mechanical or electrical engineering, they might be wanting to take a chemistry class or upper level calculus or applied calculus or applied physics. But if you're getting an MBA, you don't really need that. And the reason that I bring this up is because so that you can connect with it, that 7.85 billion people on the planet, they have different curriculums. They have different curriculums, and part of this curriculum is for us to have different quizzes, pop quizzes, examinations, and some of us may even fail a quiz, a test or so. And these failures are not an opportunity, a coat hanger for us to keep slashing ourselves and judging ourselves as dumb, as not intelligent enough. We didn't work hard enough. These failures are psycho-spiritual fertilizers that can cultivate our consciousness. The failures become fertilizers if we create a psycho-spiritual womb, if we create a compassionate self-forgiveness individually. And if we don't, and become a father or become a mother or become the head of a company, then all the judgments that we're holding inside, the way that we relate to ourselves internally, it becomes a way that we relate to other people externally. As within, so without. As below, so above. The way that we relate to other people is the way we relate to ourselves. So if we were to start inside and create a psycho-spiritual rahim, a psycho-spiritual womb, where there is forgiveness, gentility, kindness, acceptance, softness, there is a softness, then there is an opportunity of learning, growing, and healing. And it's only then that we can create families that they're only an opportunity for a compassionate womb to be created. And then there's gentility. And then when the members of that family, they make mistakes or they have limitations, and there are different behavioral patterns, the family can come together and they can help each other. And we know now, even scientifically, that when two individuals come together, they create what we refer to as a sacred third consciousness. That's why it's so important. The groups are so important. And one of the blessings during these unpredictable times is the blessings of us coming together as a community. And that's really what inspires me. That's why, you know, perhaps I woke up at 5 o'clock to meditate, to gather up and to ground myself so that we could be here together at this time.
So, Doctor,
Feisal,
we've got
questions.
Yeah. So there's two sets of. One is people are asking for advice on how to deal with this level of uncertainty. How to, I mean, they're using the word control. We both know that that's not such a. So learn to control your thoughts and stop them or guide them. So that's from one side. The other side, obviously, you've brought in this concept of 5G. So they're wondering, this is not a conspiracy. So how do we, what kind of fasting or what kind of detox do you recommend in order to protect ourselves from this reality of 4G, 5G, or whatever is going to happen?
Absolutely. One of the followers or a person that definitely was familiar with the writings of the founder of anthroposophical medicine, Rudolf Steiner, was none other than, I absolutely love this book. The book is called The Secret Lore of Magic, and it's by none other than Syed Idris Shah, who was just, I also consider him to be a conscious clairvoyant. And in this book, there's several poems that he refers to, and and I would like to, let me see if I can get a couple copies of these poems that I can share with you. One of them is The Guest House by Roomie. And this particular version or rendition is a translation by a dear friend, Coleman Barks. The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, a momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. So what Rumi left for us is, perhaps he wasn't really dealing with COVID-19 pathology or this specific form of coronavirus. But you see, the idea of controlling anything might not be very effective. One of the tools that I recommend is what I refer to as purged emotional writing, which is a way of active writing that has a deep sense of catharsis, and it allows some of these hidden emotional patterns, such as shame, such as malice, such as depression, such as anxiety, to resurface. And as you write it, and then afterwards, the process is I have found that it's most effective if you burn it. And that's actually a technique that I learned when I read one of the biographies of Rumi's life. And he used to do that. And a lot of the inventors and discoverers, they also did this particular technique. I refer to it as purge emotional writing because I think this specific form of writing, if you hold the intention that it has purgatory effect, it burns things up and it frees you up, then it does. I do believe that intention is paramount to action. The intention is paramount to action. So some of the things that you can do, this is not about, oh my God, what do I do with 5G? Well, 5G is here. That's the reality of it. You got 20,000 satellites outside, and I don't think it's not causative, but perhaps there is some, aspect of this that we could. The Wuhan, China, my understanding is was the first place on the planet that was carpeted with 5G technology. I'm aware that here in the United States, the first place that was carpeted with 5G technology was Kirkland up in Washington State, Seattle area. And that was really the first place that we saw the coronavirus replication and spread. So the technology is here. This is not about, and again, this is not about us being worried about what's out there. Some of the things that you could do, start working on your own spiritual practice. Because that as Steiner said, it's a lot more difficult now when the air is so thick and swirling with electrification to be a soul. And if we're disconnected with our own souls, then the physical body gets affected. You know, this is a time that you want to cultivate. If you were not in the, perhaps in the habit of fasting, this is a good year to really do that. Even if you cannot fast the way that it's, you know, it's the way that is spiritually it's prescribed, you could do a modified fast. Maybe you could focus on fasting from thoughts that are negative, thoughts that are corrosive. Maybe you could fast from gossiping. Maybe you could fast from the very language that you're using. You know, but start with some type of a cleanse, because that is paramount. This is the time where you create a new Wi-Fi. This is one of my teachers, Rupert Sheldrake, that refers to it. You have to start by creating a new morphogenic resonance. A morphogenic resonance is a new technology. And that technology is your soul, is your spiritual tuning in. If you don't do that, then the darkness outside can affect you. That's why we started with this premise. Greater is the light in me than any darkness outside of me. Greater is the light in me than any darkness outside of me. So instead of you worrying about the darkness outside of you, perhaps a good place to start is cultivating the light in you. The light. And this is one of the incredible verses. One of the prayers that I love is Nur, or light. Nur, the light of the light. You know, the light of the sky and earth. This is one of the qualities that we're aware of that mystery, of that God. So really orienting to cultivating the light within you. How do I do that? Well, we've covered quite a few steps. We said to start by, you know, actively cultivating, growing, farming qualities such as compassionate self-forgiveness. Maybe it's about time for you to really put down this heavy backpack of judgments that you've been holding against yourself, against the other, against your exes, against your siblings, against your neighbors, against your business partners, against your own children, you know, or against your own parents. Start there. Because once you do that level of cleansing, then that lightness of being accentuates and clears up. That's what you want to focus on, not the darkness outside of you. You know, one of my favorite, and I posted it on my Instagram page at Dr. Habib Sadeghi, was periodically, if there is a movie and I can create a distinction with it, I post it on there. And that is part of the Intellectual Medicine Soul Lessons. And I posted a section of a movie called Babies. If you haven't watched Babies, I think you should. And if you have children, watch this movie with your children or grandchildren. It's about 4 babies before they're born, and it and it documents all the way through most of their lives into, I think, adolescence. And a baby in sub-Saharan Africa, a baby in Mongolia, San Jose, California, and Tokyo, Japan. Tokyo, Japan, everything is sterile. Mom goes in to surgery center and this and that. The same is true with San Jose, California. Mongolia, I think there's a midwife or a doula. I don't think that the mom in sub-Saharan Africa had anybody. And you can see these babies. The baby in sub-Saharan Africa, it's growing, it's crawling, it sees a dog, grabs the bone out of the dog's mouth, starts chewing on it, drinking out of the little water on the ground. The Mongolia, the baby, there's a goat that comes in and licks the baby's face and and moves around. But in Tokyo, Japan, and in San Jose, California, everything is sterile, everything is cleaned out, and you see these babies growing up. Tokyo, Japan, San Jose, California, eczema, food allergies, asthma, airway reactive diseases. My God, sub-Saharan Africa, the baby is growing up like a statue of David, phenotypically strong. In Mongolia, the baby is doing horseback riding bare with no saddle. So what am I saying? What I'm saying is we have over 300 billion viruses inside. We have over 200 billion bacteria, the microbiome, and the viral biome. These are all inside. I mean, we have far more bacteria and viruses inside than we have our own genetic makeup. Greater is the light in you than any darkness outside of you. So what I want to focus on, yes, eat healthy. If you didn't eat healthy before, if most of your food came out of packages, if you consume significant amount of short chain carbohydrates, right? If you consume, this is a good time to clean up. If you have access to organic food, eat organic mostly as you can. If you don't, then some of the foods like strawberries, you're better off if you have some of the vegetables, fruits, seeds, if you eat them organic if you can. If not, for instance, one of the things that you could do, these are just specific examples to be able to activate your mind. Once you know how to fish, then you can go and fish for yourself. Walnut, most of the walnuts, what they do is they activate it and they radiate it in order for it to increase the shelf life. And in Iran, and I think in many places in Afghanistan, I'm not sure about Pakistan or India, but one of the things before consumption of walnuts, even if it's organic, we have a tendency to wash it in warm water or hot water, and we let it soak overnight. And then the next day we wash it off and so forth. And it really washes off any radiations and so forth, as well as any of the seed inhibitors or protein inhibitors. In Ayurvedic medicine, the same is true. We do the same thing with walnuts, with almonds. And that actually has medicinal quality, because when you soak almonds overnight, nuts in general, when you soak them overnight, the protein that it's covering, the seed inhibitor, gets washed off. That's why the next day you'll see that the water is very murky. So when you get rid of that water and you wash it again, now the seeds, the walnut, has activated. It has sprouted, germinated. It has released a lot of the enzymes. The digestion of it, it's a lot easier, and it actually helps you with cleansing. So these are some of the specific things that we could do, not only psycho-spiritually, starting inside, but also physically outside.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for all the incredible sharings that you've done. Maybe we have about 6 minutes left. What I'd like to do is, I've written a book, and you have as well. And in the book I've written, we're looking at, to embrace what is with trust and calmness for clarity, to emerge, to live a life in flow. And
Yes.
and obviously you're looking at, it's let's not look externally, let's look internally and create that lighthouse from within and begin with self. And one of the questions, obviously, and I'm, I in the last webinar, I shared a story of myself and, about being a great giver, but not very good at receiving. So if you could just to end with, the Clarity Cleanse, you've got the cup on the cover of the book. For everybody listening, I will send, a link to the Instagram, as well as a link to the book and some of the sharings that you've done from Roomie. So why don't you share something from the book regarding the cup, again, relating to the conversation you just had, to bring this to a close and for people to really take home, more as a concluding remark than what you've already expanded on.
Absolutely. The cup is the rahim. The cup is the uterus. The cup is where you start. You could have the most potent sperm, the best eggs on the planet. It's not going to give you a new birth. It's not going to give you a new life. You could have all the money on the planet. And I've had the privilege of ministering and mentoring some of the most powerful, influential, financially people. And at the end of it, when you sit with them, I mean, perhaps some of the technologies that we're using, I've been by their bedside when they took their last breath. And what it comes down to is that cup. That cup is what we cultivate inside. That cup is the rahim. That cup is the way we speak to ourselves. That cup is the family that we grow, we cultivate. That cup is the culture that we subscribe to. That cup is the language that we develop. That cup is that way of coming together as an intentional healing community, and to say, well, wait a minute, instead of worrying about this, being stressed about this virus, are you telling me that we have over 300 billion viruses? Yeah, and this is one of the over 300 billion that we have in our body. Instead of you worrying about what this virus might do, why don't you look within? Why don't you see how can you create a new linguistic abstraction that it's referred to as a psycho-spiritual immunity? How can you cultivate the greater light in you than the darkness that is outside of you? The cup is the uterus. A person who has that cup, my God, they can brew the best tea. But if you focus externally on going and getting the best tea, get the water, but if you don't have the cup, you're going to get burned. Sooner or later, you're going to create anxiety, depression, a psychosomatic illness, cancer, neurological issues such as Parkinson's disease, ALS, multiple sclerosis, and various different things. But perhaps the greatest, and I've learned this from you and your brilliant book, perhaps the greatest health, when we look at it, health is that greatest wealth. The greatest wealth is health. And one of the things that we've really have oriented and come back to as a community is, how could we cultivate a culture, a cup, a uterus that really creates what it means to be Rahman, what it means to be Rahim. What does it mean to have, to cultivate, and to really allow compassion, forgiveness, gentility, kindness, generosity, acceptance, surrender, to really ooze out of us and precede us. Thank you for your quality of listening wherever you are, and thank you for sharing this time and space. And I want to thank you again, Feisal, and your incredible elite team and your brilliance, and for your invitation.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Really appreciate your wisdom. You've helped me and many of the families that are listening today to move through what you described in terms of forgiveness, in terms of the blame, the shame, the the things that we were moving through to create that lighthouse. It's still, obviously, we are all works in progress. And I'm glad that you gave us the generosity of your time. And I hope to be able to do this again for this community and beyond in the near future. Thank you very much.
It'd be my privilege.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
To everybody else,
Bye-bye.
thank you very much. Thank you for your time, and see you on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, depending on what you choose for the next webinar. Thank you very much, and I wish you a good afternoon, a good morning, a good night, depending on where you're coming from or where you are.